What if you could turbocharge the exact same car, but pick between two wildly different build paths? One costs just $1,000, and the other costs $10,000. At first glance, you might think, why spend 10x? But the real difference isn't just in price, it's in performance, risk, and longevity. Today, we're counting down the 7 biggest factors that separate a budget turbo build from a high-end, $10,000 performance turbo setup. By the end, you'll know which route makes sense, whether for a daily driver, a weekend mash, or a full-blown performance car. Let's get started. 7. Turbo core cost. For a cheap build, many people go for a used or basic off-brand turbo that costs between $500 and $1,000. That may sound tempting, but this is where corners begin to show. If you spend $10,000 on a turbo build, the core turbo is likely premium, ball bearing, precision balance, made by a trusted brand like Garrett. These turbos are designed to truly handle stress, spin fast, and last far longer. The cost of these quality units alone can run into thousands of dollars, which makes up a huge part of why the build is so expensive. The difference isn't just about size. It's about the engineering, the tolerances, and the materials that make a turbo reliable when pushed hard. 6. Supporting hardware. The stuff that actually makes the turbo boost usable and safe. On a $1,000 setup, you're probably cutting corners. Cheap intercooler, mediocre piping, a basic blow-off valve, or even a weak or internal wastegate. You might skip big upgrades to the fuel system altogether. That's risky because a turbo doesn't just need to push air. It needs clean, cool, and controlled airflow, plus enough fuel. In contrast, a $10,000 turbo build will include high-efficiency intercoolers, robust piping to handle high boost pressure reliably, upgraded injectors, and possibly a high-flow fuel pump. This hardware is critical to ensure the engine isn't just spitting out more air, but actually matching that with the right fuel, and then cooling it efficiently so things don't melt or detonate. 5. Tuning and engine control. If you throw a cheap turbo on and don't tune properly, you're asking for disaster. Using a piggyback EQ or a basic generic tune is common in low-budget builds, but it's not very safe. For a real performance build, tuning should be done professionally, on a dyno, to calibrate ignition timing, boost pressure, and fuel delivery for every driving condition. A well-installed $10,000 build likely involves a standalone EQ or a high-end performance EQ. This allows for full control over ignition maps, boost curves, and safe limits. When done right, tuning makes the turbo not only powerful, but reliable and ensures that your fuel and airflow match what the engine can handle. Skip this, and you risk running lean or detonating, which can ruin your engine. 4. Installation and labor. A budget builder might try to DIY or go to a cheap shop, but installing a turbo correctly is not trivial. According to many shops, a proper turbo install with all the pieces can take 20 to 40 hours of labor, depending on the car. That's a huge time cost. If you pay a shop, that labor alone can easily be several $1,000s. With a $10,000 setup, most people go to experienced, high-performance shops because they know how to route oil lines, position the turbo, manage heat, and optimize everything. Yes, it's expensive, but it drastically reduces the risk of a bad install that could destroy parts or even the engine. 3. Power gains. Here's where things get exciting. How much extra horsepower you actually get. According to reputable car tech sources, a turbo can boost an engine's power by 10% to 50%, depending on the setup. In many realistic street setups, with a moderately sized turbo and around 6 to 8 psi of boost, you commonly see 30 to 40% horsepower gains. To put that in context, if you have a naturally aspirated engine making 200 up, adding a well-tuned turbo could push it to roughly 260 to 280 up. That sounds huge, but hitting that kind of gain reliably requires not just the turbo, but good supporting hardware and a solid tune. If you go cheap and skip parts, you may only get lower-end gains because of inefficiencies. Airflow restrictions, poor boost control, heat issues, or bad tuning can all cut into your real-world HP. But in a $10,000 build, with good parts and proper calibration, you're much more likely to hit the higher end of those potential gains, or at least come close. Efficiency matters, and the premium build lets that efficiency shine. 2. Risk and reliability. Let's talk risk. Because cheap builds and premium builds are not equal when it comes to how likely things are to go wrong. If you go for a cheap or remanufactured turbo, there's a big reliability risk. According to Garrett's own white paper, lower quality or remaining turbos, especially copies, can have up to 20% less power, 10% higher fuel consumption, and a much shorter lifespan compared to genuine, well-built turbos. These aren't just hypothetical issues. If the internal parts are weak, spinning at high RPM without proper balance or lubrication, they can fail catastrophically. Poor tuning makes things worse. Without a proper tune that matches boost, fuel flow, and ignition timing, you can run lean, detonate, or push your engine way past safe limits. That's how budget builds end up killing motors or throwing rod bolts. On the other hand, a $10,000 build often uses high-quality turbo components, tight manufacturing tolerances, and a serious tune, all of which drastically reduce the risk of failure. A premium turbo from a reputable manufacturer will go through durability testing, and when paired with the right parts and calibration, it's built to survive. That doesn't mean it's bulletproof, but the margin of safety is much higher. You're paying for durability, not just boost. 1. Value. Is $10,000 actually worth it? The biggest question is spending $10,000 on a turbo build actually worth it? Short answer, in many cases, yes, because what you're paying for is not just the turbo. You're buying engineering, reliable performance, and long-term integrity. With a full $10,000 build, you get a precision turbo, proper supporting hardware, a tuned EQ, and a pro-level install. That leads to better spool behavior, higher efficiency, more consistent power delivery, and the kind of reliability that doesn't make you cringe every time you hit boost. Over time, that reliability can mean fewer rebuilds, fewer failures, and, ironically, lower long-term costs, especially if you drive hard or plan to push your car. But if you're just looking for a quick, cheap adrenaline rush, and you accept the risk, the $1,000 route can work. The problem is, it's a gamble. Hidden costs, failure, broken parts, or a blown engine can wipe out your savings in a heartbeat. If I were building this car myself, I'd lean into the premium route. Because for me, power is only worth it when it's safe and repeatable. Giving up peace of mind for a budget build just doesn't feel worth it. Alright, here's the deal. You can turbocharge a car for $1,000. But when you go that cheap, you're playing with fire. The risk is real, and the performance is often limited. On the other hand, a full $10,000 turbo build isn't just for show. It's engineered to perform, last, and deliver serious power without destroying your engine. So I want to hear from you. Which side would you pick? The budget gamble or the premium path? Drop your pick in the comments now. And if this breakdown helped you understand what turbo builds really cost, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. I'm doing more deep dive gearhead content, and you won't want to miss what's next. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.